Let's do this. So, who here has a Myanmar bank account? Hands up, don't be shy, hands up. I promise I won't ask you for money. Now, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for supporting Myanmar's banks. Now, what do you do with that bank account? If you're like most Myanmar, you may get your salary paid into it. You may save a little bit of money. These days, you can use an ATM or even a point of sale to make payments. But maybe some of you would like to borrow, to start a small business, maybe finance that new smartphone you've been looking at, maybe even buy a new home. But can you? This is what I would like to talk about today. Those of you that put up your hand when I asked you whether you had a Myanmar bank account, unfortunately, you are in the minority here in Myanmar. Only 15% of Myanmar's 54 million people have a bank account. And this is often used as the measure of financial inclusion in this country. Now, I believe that this statistic is misleading. I believe that the number of people who can borrow from Myanmar's banks is a better measure of how well our banks are serving the Myanmar community. And I know that if I ask for a show of hands in this room and across the country of how many people have bank loans, far fewer hands would go up. This is a problem. If banks are only taking deposits and not lending, they are not doing their jobs. But let's think here a little. Do Myanmar really not borrow? Oh, yes, they do. Out there is an informal banking system with innovative products and services that suits the needs of the Myanmar people. Let me give you a few examples. Here we have a market fruit vendor. She borrows on the 10-11 system. She may borrow 100,000 kyat in the morning and repay 110,000 kyat in the evening. 10% per day. Yeah, that's right. 3,600% per year. This is called the Nepian Do here in Myanmar. And here we have an SME owner borrowing from friends and family to finance the working capital in his business, perhaps at 5 to 6% per month. So he's borrowing at between 60 and 75% per year. Have you heard of the Wong Meta Savings and Credit Union? The Wong Meta Savings and Credit Union is a member-operated loans and savings scheme running Kachin, Shan, Mandalay, and Bago division. Run out of monasteries and nunneries. They have a very interesting collateral. The spiritual well-being of their borrowers in this life and the next. That's right. If you don't repay, you may come back in the next life of something rather uncomfortable. Their rate started 4% and dropped to 2% after 4 years. And then we have this chap, Ko Mong Mong. He's my favorite. I think he's the happiest banker in Myanmar. He runs a light truck from Patain to Yangon and finances the smartphones of his brother's co-workers. He keeps a record on his Samsung like this. Now, a little bit of wishful thinking from Ko Mong Mong. He's not financing $100,000 phones. These are in Myanmar chat. But what's the read-through here? Everybody in Myanmar is lending, except the banks. Many people in Myanmar are borrowing, just not from the banks. So then you may ask, where are all the deposits going in the formal banking system? Well, I like to call this the reverse Robin Hood. That's right, taking from the poor and giving to the rich. Let me explain. The highest fixed deposit you can get in this country today is 10%. That doesn't even keep up with inflation. Over the last 90 days, we've seen the chat drop between 15 and 20%. Now, as we know, most things in this country are imported. That means the purchasing power of your deposits has gone down by about 15% in 90 days. This is a problem. And what is worse is that many banks in this country continue to lower their deposit rates. So where does the giving to the rich part come in? Well, as you may know, many banks here in Myanmar must lend against collateral. That's right. They can only lend to people who already have money. In the formal banking system, you must have money to borrow money. Potential borrowers must have collateral that they post to the bank, who then lends against that collateral. Something like a pawn shop. What is even more interesting is that these borrowers can borrow at a very low rate of interest, 13%. Remember our market fruit vendor borrowing at 3,600%, our SME at 70%? 13% is looking pretty good, right? Now, unfortunately, only a small number of Myanmar can access finance at this interest rate. This is why Myanmar's formal banking system operates like a reverse Robin Hood. Savers are earning less and less interest, and a small group of borrowers can access funding at a very low rate of interest. So, am I suggesting that we give up on Myanmar's formal banking system? That we get behind the financial anarchy that we've talked about earlier today? No, I'm not. We must get Myanmar's banks in the game. We must allow them to support Myanmar's development, to support small business, homeowners, to improve their lives. Most importantly, we must get lending and borrowing out of the shadows and into a regulated banking system that is inclusive and safe. This is not a radical proposal, ladies and gentlemen. We have many examples from around the world of how free markets drive economic development. Myanmar is one of the only countries on the planet that still has fixed interest rates. So let's talk a little bit about some of the specific benefits that might come to this country if we were to open to free markets. SMEs and consumers today cannot borrow from Myanmar's banks. With a free market, they would be able to access finance at interest rates far lower than they currently do in the informal market. Savers would be able to accrue a higher rate of interest on their deposits as banks compete for those deposits to lend to the larger borrowing public. So let me summarize before we wrap things up. Today, Myanmar has two financial systems. The formal financial system that serves the needs of a select few. The informal financial system that serves the needs of, well, everybody else. Neither works. We must take bold steps to make Myanmar's banks more relevant, to support the economic development of this country, the SMEs, the consumers, and the people of this country to make their lives better. One country with one financial system. So let me tell you a joke I heard the other day. Financial inclusion in Myanmar is about including banks in Myanmar's financial system. Let's do that. Let's include Myanmar's banks in Myanmar's financial system. We will all benefit. Thank you for listening.